Right now, as you're listening to this, your brain is making thousands of decisions without asking your permission. Which sounds to focus on, how to interpret my tone, whether to trust what I'm saying. And here's the scary part. Manipulators know exactly how to hijack this process. Today, we're diving deep into how manipulators control your mind without you noticing. Specifically, the cognitive shortcuts they exploit, the gaslighting tactics that make you doubt reality, and the neuroscience behind why these techniques work so well. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how to spot these invisible attacks and build psychological armor against them. Let me bring in someone who's spent years studying this dark art. Help me understand, when we talk about manipulation, what's actually happening in our brains?
So here's the thing. Your brain isn't the rational decision maker you think it is. According to research from Science News Today, our brains operate more like a parliament where different regions argue and negotiate. The limbic system wants immediate gratification, while the prefrontal cortex tries to think long-term.
A parliament? That's fascinating.
Exactly. And manipulators understand this internal conflict. They know that when you're making decisions, your brain relies on what psychologists call cognitive biases. These are systematic patterns of deviation from rational judgment. Basically, mental shortcuts that help you process information quickly.
Mental shortcuts sound helpful, though. Why are they a problem?
They are helpful, but here's where it gets sinister. According to research from Unplugged Psych, these biases can be leveraged for manipulation by exploiting people's tendency to rely on mental shortcuts. Take confirmation bias. You favor information that confirms your existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence.
Oh, so manipulators just feed you information that confirms what you already think?
Exactly. Or they use the anchoring effect. You rely too heavily on the first piece of information you receive. Like in salary negotiations, if someone throws out a lowball number first, that anchors your expectations for the entire conversation.
That's actually terrifying when you think about it. What other tactics do they use?
Well, let's talk about gaslighting. This is where things get really dark. According to Psychology Today, gaslighters often start by acting charming, then use devious tactics to make you doubt yourself, that's primary gaslighting, and turn others against you, secondary gaslighting.
Wait, there are different types of gaslighting?
Oh yeah. And here's a wild fact. The term actually comes from a 1938 play called Gaslight, where a husband manipulates his wife into thinking she's going insane. The tactics haven't changed much.
That's chilling. And it became Merriam-Webster's Word of the Year in 2022, right? Shows how common this has become.
Exactly. And according to Bonnie Mitchell from Healthy Life Recovery, the ultimate goal is to gain power and control by making the victim dependent on the gaslighter's version of events. It's a systematic effort to make someone question their sanity.
So how do you even know if it's happening to you?
Great question. According to Choosing Therapy research, the first sign is if you feel confused after interactions with someone. You'll rarely be confused by someone with pure, good intentions. The second sign is if you feel hesitant or fearful to address your confusion.
That makes sense. If you can't ask questions without it becoming an argument, that's a red flag.
Exactly. And gaslighters use specific techniques. Psychology Today identifies blame blitzing, overwhelming you with rapid, baseless accusations. They'll call you a control freak, a numbskull, say you don't know what you're doing, all in rapid succession.
That sounds exhausting to deal with.
It is. They also use paradoxical defense, flipping the narrative and falsely calling you the manipulator. And weasel wording, using phrases like, I don't recall that happening, to create illusions of clarity while actually deceiving you.
This is getting into some really sophisticated psychological warfare territory. Are there other covert tactics we should know about?
Oh, absolutely. There's this concept called shadow steering from recent research by Mia Kate. It describes how subconscious cues and stimuli influence human behavior without people's conscious awareness. Think targeted advertising, algorithmic personalization, political messaging.
Shadow steering, that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
But it's very real. The research shows how subtle environmental triggers, priming effects, and implicit messaging can guide decisions and actions. And here's the kicker. According to studies on unconscious perceptual processing, the brain doesn't consciously need to know contextual information to learn its value and make decisions.
So our brains are making decisions based on information we're not even aware we received?
Exactly. And manipulators in relationships use this too. According to Neuber research, covert manipulators create emotional highs and lows, an emotional roller coaster designed to foster an addictive cycle of dependency.
An addictive cycle? How does that work?
Think about it like this. They give you intense positive emotions, make you feel like soulmates, everything seems perfect. Then they withdraw attention and approval, leaving you with sadness, rejection, inadequacy. You're left confused and feeling worse than before the relationship began.
That's like psychological addiction. You keep chasing that high they gave you initially.
Exactly. And they create power imbalances too, gaining more influence over emotional, social, or financial aspects of the relationship. The other person ends up feeling helpless and controlled.
This is all pretty dark stuff. But I'm curious about the bigger picture. Why are humans so vulnerable to this in the first place?
Great question. According to neuroscience research, it goes back to how our brains evolved. The limbic system, the ancient part dealing with emotion and reward, often overpowers the prefrontal cortex that handles rational thinking.
So we're basically running on ancient software that's not designed for modern manipulation techniques?
That's a perfect way to put it. And research from Oxford academics shows that manipulation works by exploiting dual process theories. We have fast, unconscious processes that identify options, and slower, conscious processes that select among them. Manipulators target those fast, unconscious processes.
So they're essentially hacking our mental shortcuts before our conscious mind even gets involved?
Exactly. And they exploit specific biases like the availability heuristic, framing effects, status quo bias, immediacy bias, and our tendencies towards social conformity. It's like they have a playbook of human psychological vulnerabilities.
This is making me paranoid about every interaction I have. How do we protect ourselves?
Well, here's some hope. RTT research developed something called inoculation theory. You can be protected from persuasive influence like your body is protected from disease. It's psychological vaccination through education.
Psychological vaccination? Tell me more about that.
The idea is that immunity to stronger challenges comes through pre-exposure to weaker challenges. So by learning about common manipulative tactics, you develop resistance against future manipulative attacks. Knowledge becomes your shield.
That's actually really empowering. What specific tactics should people watch out for?
RTT identifies 7 core manipulation concepts: conspiratorial reasoning that exploits our bias to find connections, intentional trolling to provoke responses, impersonation to gain trust, distorting scientific consensus, evoking emotion over reason, polarization, and discrediting opponents instead of addressing arguments.
Those sound like things we see in politics and social media all the time.
Absolutely. And there are also the classic persuasion principles that can be used manipulatively. Dr. Robert Cialdini identified 6: liking, reciprocity, social proof, consistency, authority, and scarcity. When used ethically, they're fine. When used to manipulate, they're dangerous.
So the same techniques can be used for good or evil, depending on the intent.
Exactly. The key is recognizing when someone is using these techniques to serve their interests at your expense versus using them to genuinely help you make better decisions.
What about the people doing the manipulating? Are they always aware of what they're doing?
That's a fascinating question. According to Callie Werner from the OCD Institute of Texas, sometimes manipulators don't actually know they're gaslighting because they might be struggling with mental illness themselves, like narcissistic personality disorder.
So some people are manipulating others without even realizing it?
Right. And psychologist Jasnoor Kaur notes that gaslighting often stems from insecurity. When people find it uncomfortable to admit mistakes or take accountability, pushing blame onto someone else makes them feel better.
That actually makes it more complex, doesn't it? It's not always a calculated evil plan.
Exactly. But the impact on victims is the same, regardless of intent. And research shows that anyone is susceptible to manipulation in relationships that go beyond surface-level acquaintance.
So what's the bottom line here? How do we actually protect ourselves in practice?
First, trust your gut. If you feel confused or hesitant to express your feelings after interactions with someone, pay attention to that. Second, learn to recognize the tactics we've discussed. Third, understand that your brain's decision-making process has vulnerabilities.
And I imagine it helps to slow down our decision-making process when we can?
Absolutely. Remember, manipulators often target those fast, unconscious processes. When you slow down and engage your prefrontal cortex, your rational thinking, you're much harder to manipulate.
This has been eye-opening. Any final thoughts on staying psychologically safe in a world full of manipulation?
Remember that knowledge is power. The more you understand these tactics, the less effective they become against you. And don't be afraid to question your own thinking. That's actually a sign of psychological health, not weakness.
So when you step back from all this, here's what really matters. Your brain is constantly making decisions without your conscious input, and manipulators know exactly how to exploit that process. But now you have something most people don't: awareness of how these invisible attacks work.
Exactly. And here's the empowering part. Once you understand cognitive biases, gaslighting tactics, and shadow steering, you can start building that psychological immunity. Every time you recognize a manipulation attempt, you're strengthening your defenses.
It's like developing a sixth sense for psychological manipulation. You start seeing the matrix, so to speak.
Perfect analogy. And remember, this isn't about becoming paranoid or distrustful. It's about becoming more discerning. You can still be open and trusting while also being psychologically protected.
Right now, someone is probably trying to manipulate your thinking. Maybe it's an ad designed to trigger your scarcity bias, or a social media post exploiting confirmation bias, or even a person in your life using emotional highs and lows to control you. But here's the difference. Now you'll see it coming. Remember, your mind is your most valuable asset. Guard it well, question everything, and trust that gut feeling when something doesn't feel right. Because in a world full of mental manipulation, awareness isn't just power, it's freedom.